Episode 53, Your Life, Your Choice. Welcome to Longing for More, where professionals haunted by the knowing that they were created for more come to strengthen their faith and find the path to stop wasting time in boredom or overwhelm and instead live a life of fulfillment and peace. So, have you ever wondered what exactly I mean when I talk about God whispering in your ear? Well, I had a situation this week where He did just that. He whispered into my ear, and then he gave me another nudge, and then he gave me another hint, and pretty soon it was like he was shouting at me. This all happened after I recorded this week's episode, so stay tuned after I say my farewell, because I'm going to give you exactly what happened in that situation, so maybe you can understand how it works for me anyway. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you. I sat in the front row of the local Think, Drive, Stay Alive event, listening to the speaker before me share his life story. As he spoke, he was lying a trail of papers that snaked all across the stage. They were representing the rap sheet of his convictions, starting from when he was a teenager through well into his adult life. 37 convictions total, all directly related to his drug addiction. Naturally, his choices led to one family loss after another and had a huge impact on his wife and their children. As I listened of his story of tragedy, all I could think of was, how am I ever going to make an impact on this audience after this man's powerful story? Why would these kids ever listen to me? A few minutes later, I was on that same stage as the other speakers whose lives had been forever changed as a result of drugs or alcohol. Our mission that day was to encourage the high school students in attendance and others listening on the radio to make responsible choices. Our hope was that by seeing the consequences of others' bad decisions, they would be inspired to make good choices. We wanted to help those listening to avoid having to mourn the death of a loved one or spend years in prison due to addiction, as was relayed in the stories shared from that stage that day. It was my first foray into public speaking as a life coach, and looking back at it today, I realized that my speech really wasn't bad. Sure, the presentation could have been smoother. I could have spoken with more confidence and more authority, no doubt, but the message was spot on. In hindsight, I realized that the best thing I did was to focus on the positive by helping the attendees to create a vision of what their best life could be like. I guided them through how the choices they make can help them get that best life, instead of spending my time talking about all the things that they shouldn't do. Focusing on what we don't want never gets us what we do want, does it? So here I am, 2 years later, realizing that I was giving my first speech on living your more, well before I knew that that would be my brand one day. But that is what makes my story so incredible to me. Back then, I had a plan, and I was so focused on making it happen exactly the way I thought it would that I didn't see the clues that God was giving me about the direction He was leading me. When invited to present at that event, I really had to stretch my imagination to figure out how I'm going to talk about making choices to a group of high school kids related to health coaching. I'm glad I didn't let the fact that it didn't make sense stop me from moving forward. There was a time when I would have talked myself out of it. I would have let the fear of speaking on stage, much less the radio, keep me from saying yes to that invitation. I mean, it was more than a little intimidating. As I sat there right before going on stage, questioning my sanity, a part of me wanted to throw my whole presentation out the window and talk about something entirely different than what I had planned. Fear will do that, you know. It will make you think everything you have prepared is wrong, that you aren't qualified to give that speech, or to take that assignment, or to give your witness. It will make you believe things about yourself that aren't true. Do you do that too? Do you self-doubt yourself out of doing anything that is outside of your comfort zone? Sadly, we've been programmed to fear anything that is new to us, to avoid taking any risk because we might fail, to say no unless we are absolutely sure that we can do it perfectly. The problem is, to get that thing that we really want in life almost always requires us to step outside of the area where we are most comfortable. And given the choice, We almost always will choose the path of least resistance, or the path that doesn't make us uncomfortable. I adopted a saying years ago that said, God didn't say it would be easy, He said it would be worth it. I had no idea how true that little saying really is. An example of what that looked like in my recent past is reflected when I decided to retire and go into coaching. To do so, I took a pretty big financial hit to our household income to step into the completely unknown world of entrepreneurship. And honestly, I wrestled with the idea for months with myself before I even broached the subject with my husband. Believe me, he was not crazy about the idea because, honestly, it would risk a lot of the things that we had planned for our future together. But God had planted that seed in my heart, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. In the process of getting my coaching certifications, I've made some pretty significant investments in my education. Even though I knew I was being called to make the change, it was a scary prospect. But I knew I had to take that step in faith. Despite the fear, I felt called to trust that God would not let me fail. I love how James Wedmore framed it for me recently in his podcast. He basically said, the only way we can succeed is to believe in ourselves enough to keep trying until we do succeed. The only way we fail is when we give up. Thank goodness I have some amazing people in my life who help me to believe in myself each time things get tough and I begin to waver on that belief. Knowing that God created me for this purpose, having a vision of what I want in life, and then having the courage to go after it has been nothing short of transformational for me. I recently had this aha that changed how I looked at this whole experience. I realized that I am already living the life I wanted to live when I set out on this journey. I get to decide what my day looks like. I focus on my self-care. I get to see my children and grandchildren often. I am serving in my community in a meaningful way. I go to lunch with friends frequently, read books regularly, and in the midst of living life on my terms, I am helping others live a life of fulfillment and peace. To help them discover their more is my purpose. I love that God gave me what I wanted while I was chasing after what I thought I needed to get what I wanted. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever been so focused on what you thought you needed to do to get what you want that you didn't even realize that by simply trusting in Him and taking action, you've been given what you really want? So what do you really want? Or in my terminology, what is your more? Is it to be less overwhelmed with your day-to-day life? Or is it to have more time to travel and enjoy treasures in other parts of the world? Or maybe for you, it's as simple as finally developing a more meaningful relationship with your children, spouse, coworker, or even God. It really doesn't matter because everybody's more is different. And it should be because God created each and every one of us uniquely because He has a special purpose and plan for each and every one of us. So as much as I'd love to tell you how to live your more, I can't. I can plant seeds that may stir your soul. I can give hints by telling you what others have done to discover theirs that may inspire you. But there is only one path to the life your soul is longing for, and it's locked deep inside of you. If anyone tells you what you should be doing, it's probably their dream for you, or possibly their dream for themselves, but not yours. Guard against falling into that trap. It will only lead to frustration and disappointment. Further, choosing the easy route or not actually taking action will often turn out to actually be the harder route. It too will lead to frustration, overwhelm, and a deep sense of emptiness. To have a life with no purpose and with a constant sense of longing for more can help us lose our focus and cause us to search in all the wrong places. Like my friend Michael Arnold, an addiction author and coach, said in a recent post on Facebook, "We did not choose this life. We didn't just wake up one day and said, hey, I want to be an alcoholic. I want to be a junkie. Nope, that's not how it goes. We all ended up searching for something in a bag, a bottle, a pipe, a can, or a pill. And by the time we realized we couldn't find love, belonging, or a home there, it was too late. For you, maybe it isn't drugs or alcohol. Maybe it's shopping online or job hopping or burying yourself in front of a television or a computer screen. But if you are listening to this today, it's not too late. You can make the choice to do something different. You can make the decision that you are no longer going to avoid that whisper in your ear and to instead courageously step into the life your soul is longing for, the one God created you for. I can't tell you what your purpose is, but I can help you discover your more. I can even go further and guide you to step into your more by helping you navigate all the obstacles we put in our own way of having what we really want. So many times we are resistant to making the changes we need to make to really live the life full out the way God wants us to. We allow doubt, fear, and our limiting beliefs to win out. We forget that God only plants a seed of desire in our hearts for the things that He will also equip us to obtain. If this is stirring a longing in you that you can't let go of, it's a sign that it is your time. God brought you here for a reason, and He's paved the path for you to step out in courage and begin living the life He created you for. It is, after all, your life and your choice. You get to decide. And you will continue to decide through the remainder of your life. I don't believe we ever reach the end of our journey towards more until we take our last breath. My journey has taken some turns I didn't see coming, but thankfully I was willing to take the next step when encouraged to do so. I can honestly say that making the choice to say yes to God and going all out for what He is calling me to has been, without a doubt, one of the best choices I have made in my life. Are you ready to discover your more? If so, let's visit. I'll leave a link to my scheduler in the show notes, and I invite you to stop living small and say yes to God's calling in your life. By taking this first step, you are in no way committing to anything other than an hour of time focused completely on you and your dreams for more. When I think back to that stage 2 years ago, I had no way of knowing my practice would evolve, and I would expand my message to include inviting professionals to trust God and embrace their faith in their day-to-day lives. Nor did I know that I would begin this podcast. I hadn't really put the pieces together to realize that choices are the basis of all of our lives, and even though we make thousands a day, we do so in such a casual manner that we can either use them to propel us into an amazing life, or we can allow them to completely ruin our lives. So the bottom line is, we are living the lives that we are as a result of the choices we have made along the way. Are you living the life you would choose? Or did you forfeit your right to choose by avoiding the difficult decisions? Are you making choices that are consistent with your values? Or are you doing what you feel you should without regard to what God is calling you to do? Are you ready to take control and make better choices so that you, like those kids I spoke with that day in the theater and on the radio, can live your best life? There is no better time than right now to start making the change. Thank you for listening today. I know your life is busy and every minute you have is valuable. I appreciate that you choose to spend time with me. If you liked what you heard, please leave a comment in iTunes. If you know of someone that needs to hear this message, please share it with them. And if this stirred you to make some changes in your life, or if it inspired you to schedule a Discover Your More breakthrough session with me, don't wait. Life will continue to happen, and you'll be swept away into your normal routine in just a few minutes. So do it now. Make the choice this minute to live your more. Well, I promised before the episode that I would share with you after the end how I got a message from God about this episode after I'd finished recording it. So basically what happened was when I got done with the episode, I had this feeling like it was just off. There was something that wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I just ignored it and wrote it off to my trying to be a perfectionist and didn't think much more about it. Well, that night I had trouble sleeping. And so I got up during the night to do my devotions. And one of my devotions led me to the verse in 1 Corinthians 6:20 that says, "Honor God with your body." And it got me to thinking about the pro-choice movement and and wondering how aborting a child could ever be construed as honoring God with your body in any way. And I, started really just thinking about that. And then I went on to think, I really need to do another episode. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world today with the legislation and things. And I just really struggle with this fallacy that a woman has the right to choose whether she would keep or terminate a pregnancy. I thought about a few clips I'd heard recently about how if a woman could be criminalized if she miscarried, or how another one said the man should not be allowed to legislate what a woman does with her body. The media would want you to believe that every woman is outraged that there is legislation out there to limit a woman's right to choose an abortion. But they are wrong. And it is wrong for them to try and speak for those of us who love life and who would never support the worldly view that babies should be disposed of when they are an inconvenience to a mother. So I was praying about that the next morning as I showered, and it struck me that someone who read the title to this episode, the title being Your Life, Your Choice, might mistakenly believe that I was pro-choice. And I knew that I needed to make a change, that I couldn't let it go as that. So I was planning to do that. And then after church, I did my Bible study, and the title was For a Time Such as This, the same title I gave to episode number 37, where I discussed abortion. Folks, I have to say that it is our life, and we do get to choose what we do with our life, but we must do so responsibly. It is a privilege, and we need to use grace and wisdom when we're making the choices that we have. Every choice we make needs to be checked against Scripture and make sure that it's in alignment with God's Word. And then we need to proceed and completely trust Him that He will provide with that choice that sometimes doesn't make sense in the world. He will make good come from every circumstance, every single one. I had to make that choice years ago, and I chose life. Could I have terminated the pregnancy that I had when I was 23 years old? I was in college and was single. Sure, I could have. And would my life have been easier at that time? Absolutely. Would that decision have allowed me to move on from that failed relationship without reminders of what might have been? Of course it would have. Am I sorry that I have had a constant reminder of that failed relationship all these 30, almost 5 years later, and how the father of that child could have loved me more? I could, but not for a minute. The joy that I have in my life from my son and now his young family far outweigh any negatives from that situation. I realize that everybody's circumstances are different, but I really believe with all of my heart that God can make every choice be the right choice if we live in alignment with Him and His will. Now, I also know that we all make mistakes, and I could have just as easily made a different choice, and that God would have forgiven me for that, as He does forgive all of us for the sins that we commit. So I just felt like I needed to come back on here today and clarify that when I say your life, your choice, I'm saying we need to do that responsibly, and we need to do that in a manner that is loving and thoughtful of God's will for our lives. We need to surrender and give up control and live in His will. He'll make all the rest of the details work out beautifully if we will just trust Him to do that. Thanks for sticking with me as I clarify and share with how God whispered in my ear what needed to change in this episode. God bless you, and again, go live your more and live it in God's peace.